Canada's much in the news these days, and not only because the country is this year celebrating its 150th birthday. Lance Stroll looked good in his home Grand Prix and followed this with a podium in Baku and that points finish in Austria. Niki Latifi has also been running strongly in Formula 2, scoring 3 podium finishes from the last 4 races. And then there's the little matter of a certain anniversary, of Gilles Villeneuve making his Formula 1 debut at Silverstone 40 years ago and creating overnight the place of Canada on the motor racing map. We lost Gilles in his prime, but his son Jacques went on to win the '97 World Championship. Gilles would have loved that, for he was a family man, you see, as well as a dazzlingly fast and ultra-competitive racing driver. Gilles Villeneuve, Giles Newtown as James Hunt used to call him, owed much indeed to the '76 world champion because James and several other leading European Formula 1 drivers flew in '76 to Trois-Rivières, Canada, to compete in a big starting money Formula Atlantic race scheduled, would you believe, between the Dutch and Italian Grand Prix. Gilles not only won that race with ease, but also massively impressed Hunt with his car control and his general approach. Not many world stars of Hunt's magnitude would have thought much more about it, but Hunt was different. He cajoled McLaren into giving Villeneuve an F1 test in '77. Gilles spun on just about every Silverstone corner during his one day of running prior to the British Grand Prix, but he didn't hit anything and he was quick right from the start. 3 days later, he qualified his older McLaren M23 between the newer M26s of Hunt and Jochen Mass. After practice, he could be seen walking around the paddock, tiny inside a new Marlboro jacket, almost unnoticed as he and his wife embraced the biggest day in his career so far. And in the Marlboro motorhome, Villeneuve slipped into the McLaren briefing, almost embarrassed, almost as an intruder. And he said nothing until James smilingly earned the day's rhetorical question award by saying, "Gilles, do you like testing? We've got this day at Hockenheim, you see, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make it." Gilles raced to an early 7th in the British Grand Prix, lost time due to a faulty water temperature gauge, of all things, and finished 11th. His fastest race lap, 1:20.14, was bettered only by Hunt, John Watson, Gunnar Nilsson and Jody Scheckter, the latter by only 0.01. Gilles led an F1 race for the first time at Long Beach, 1978. On the Monday morning after the race, he placed his bell helmet on the breakfast table, ordered eggs Benedict and orange juice, and said, "Look, no oil smears. Everyone was behind me." The 1978 Gilles Villeneuve Ball was the big pre-race event at Montreal's Hyatt Regency, for this was the inaugural Grand Prix on the Ile Notre Dame, and here was a Canadian hero to toast. It was October and it was cold, icy cold. Gilles chose to race Michelin 111s rather than the harder 103s fitted to Reutemann's car. And soon he was stirring the capacity crowd. He outbraked his future teammate Jody Scheckter at the hairpin. He seemed destined for a strong second place behind Jean-Pierre Jariet's Lotus 79. Then Jariet slowed and then retired with overheating, the result of a punctured radiator. Joan Villeneuve stood quietly by the pit wall. The Ferrari team hung out slow signs, and Gilles, driving as cautiously as he could amongst the snow flurries, continued to draw away from Scheckter. He crossed the line to win, with his mother in tears, the grandstands in turmoil, and his Ferrari in perfect shape. Gilles won again a few months later in South Africa, where he memorably raced the soft Michelin 135s to win a wet-dry race that could so easily have gone to Jody Scheckter. He ordered his favourite meal in the Kyalami Ranch the night before the race, minestrone soup, hold the cheese, fillet steak, extra chips, no veg, and vanilla ice cream with double chocolate sauce. Post-win, back in the room, it was time for a toasted ham sandwich and a Coke. Oh, and hold the cheese with the ham, he repeated down the phone. In the space of 2 practice sessions, Gilles used 12 sets of Michelin qualifying tyres to take that pole with the Ferrari T4, and also invented the power shift as we know it today. "I kept the throttle flat and declutched while I changed gear," he told me later. "I switched off the rev limiter, and when I changed from 3rd to 4th, I could actually feel a touch of wheel spin. I saw 14,200 revs at one point," he said with a laugh. If Gilles' essence was that of the pure racing driver, his star was one of pure ethics. Despite winning 2 races in succession, Gilles agreed in Monaco not to race his teammate Jody Scheckter should Scheckter find himself in front. Why? Because he saw Jody as a senior driver and respected him as such. Just to be sure though, Ferrari also took an inordinately long time to solve a fuel pressure problem on Gilles' car on Saturday morning. Gilles scored only 2 poles in his Formula 1 career, but that didn't matter because he didn't need front row start positions in order to lead a race. In Austria 79, he took the lead into turn 1 from P5 on the grid, and at the same circuit in 81, he also led from P3. In Spain, 81, he was third into the first corner after qualifying 7th, and there, of course, he went on to win. Fighting hard for second place, Gilles and René Arnoux bang wheels and swap positions all around Dijon in 79. It was spectacular, it was brilliant to see, but it was all under control, for the two drivers were friends and there was, withal, a mutual respect. Other drivers in Gilles' good books, Carlos Reutemann for sure, Jody Scheckter, Patrick Tambay, Nigel Mansell and Bruno Giacomelli. Way before motorhomes were invented, Gilles bought a long, articulated trailer and paid a couple to drive it all over Europe for his family's use at Grand Prix. It wintered in the Villeneuve house in Cannes, alongside Gilles' Fiat 124 Spider and Ferrari 308. And only once, to my knowledge, did Gilles fail to remove his shoes before walking on the trailer's thick piled carpet. That was at Jarama 81, when he was so disgusted with the handling of the Ferrari 126K in practice that he just wanted to go away and hide. It's so bad, I remember him saying, "I can see the marshals all running for cover as I go through the quick corners." After winning the 81 Monaco Grand Prix, Gilles sent a telex to Enzo Ferrari saying, "Dear Ingegneri, I tried very hard all day to break your drive shafts, but I just couldn't do it. Thank you." Gilles and his teammate Didier Pironi were wired up with heart rate monitors during practice for the 81 French Grand Prix at Dijon. While Pironi regularly stepped over the 200 beats per minute mark, Gilles began the morning at just over 60 and peaked at 168 when he mowed down 3 layers of catch fencing and crashed heavily on the outside of the fast last corner. During the drivers' strike in South Africa in 1982, Gilles and Elio De Angelis amused the other drivers huddled in the Sunnyside Park Hotel with their piano skills. Gilles' party pieces included House of the Rising Sun, Hey Jude, Summertime, and various Scott Joplin rags. Oh yes, and by the way, he shared a bed with Alan Prost. After blowing a rear Michelin in the 79 Dutch Grand Prix, Gilles famously drove the car back to the pits, front wheel waving in the air. The situation was hopeless, but Gilles nonetheless had to be dragged from the car, so determined was he to continue. It wasn't only his natural drive. Gilles was making a point that day about leading again and yet again something going wrong, and about the stupidity of the 79 championship rules in which only 4 races counted for points in each half. The same resolution would fill his mind at Zolder in 82. He'd been betrayed at Imola by Didier Pironi, a driver he thought he could trust and to whom he had given his trust. He had fought almost single-handedly against the crazy qualifying tyre rules at the time, which amounted to 2 sets only per driver, thus enticing huge risks to be taken amongst slower cars on very crowded circuits. Either have lots of sets or ban them altogether. That was Gilles' argument, and he was absolutely correct. He had resolved also to leave Ferrari at the end of that year. He had had enough. And so on Friday at Zolder, he complained about slower drivers, one of whom was Jochen Mass. On Saturday, down to his last mixed set of qualifiers, Gilles again found Mass in his path. He didn't lift. He needed to out-qualify Pironi. He chose to go to the right, and so at the last millisecond did Jochen Mass. We said goodbye to Gilles in Berthierville, Canada. Jody was brilliant, as was Bruno Giacomelli. No one from Ferrari attended the funeral, however, nor was there anyone from the FIA or FOM. Gilles was too much of his own man, you see, too big for the Formula One heavies, too bright a star merely for the Formula One galaxy.